All right, so in this week's lesson, we're going to be talking about a gospel-style composition. It's a lot of fun to play. You can play it all by yourself. We're going to break it all down note for note. And I'm also going to explain several points that relate to this style of playing so that you can work these into your playing, whether you're improvising or you're writing your own music. Just some ideas so that you can start to incorporate this stuff into what you do. So I've got this lesson split into two parts. In this video, we're going to go through the first half. If you'd like to learn the second half, as well as download the tablature and also access the on-screen tab viewer, you can get those things by going to activemelody.com. Go to the weekly lessons page and do a search for EP431. Okay, so before I jump into the specifics of everything I played note for note, I want to talk through a little bit of, I don't even want to say the word theory because it's going to run people off. I want to talk through three ideas that are related to gospel, things that I hear over and over again. And I spent a lot of time analyzing this sound and what is it that makes it unique? What gives it that gospel flavor? And there's 3 points that I want to address in this. And these are the things that you can incorporate in your playing. If you want to skip this, though, and you don't want to hear these things, just go right to the song that I played in the intro and learn how to play that. You can do that by skipping to the time on the screen right now. But I don't know why you do that. To me, this is the value, is understanding how it all works. But anyway, I understand we all learn in different ways. So the first thing that I want to point out has to do with timing or cadence. And when you're playing this style of this gospel blues style, it has a little bit of a shuffle. You don't play straight on the beat. So this song that we're basing all of this on is called This Little Light of Mine. So that's the melody that you're hearing here. Some of you know that song, some of you don't. I learned it as a kid growing up in church. It's one of those songs we sang. And if you were to look at a chord chart, like in a chord book, and play it the way that it's written there, it would sound like this. So you can see the tempo is like this, and I'm playing right on the beat. Listen to the difference. If I were to play it with a little bit of shuffle, it would sound like this. Same tempo. Hear that? I'm playing ahead of the beat. Listen, if I do it slowly. Hear that? I play the note, and then you hear the beat. That makes a big difference, that one little change. And what that allows you to do, I think, part of the reason that even exists is that when you're playing ahead of the beat, you have more time to hang out. So like, this is the shuffle version. And I can do a little improvised thing there. So I have more time to do that versus I don't have much time to do anything. I have to go right into the next thing. And in that time, you can just let the music open up and do its thing, or you can improvise something. So that's the first thing, is a little bit of a shuffle to it. You never just play straight on the beat. You always kind of ahead of the beat a little bit. The next thing is that you can pivot between whatever chord you're on and that chord's 4 chord. So, and this works best over the 1 chord. Now, some of you are going, what do you mean numbers? Where are these numbers coming from? If you don't know the numbers, you can check out the Essential Theory course that I have at Active Melody. I go through all of this, all of the essential stuff. And I like to plug that course because a lot of stuff, we talk about, this is sort of your background information. But I'm going to assume you know your numbers. And so what I mean by that is if we're playing on it in the key of G, which this song is in that we're doing here, I can go between the G and the C chord. The C is the 4 chord of my G chord. So I can go. Look at that. 1, 4, 1, 4, 1. I can do it often like that, or I could just do it once. It doesn't matter. When I see in the chord chart, when I see a G, That doesn't just mean G. It means G, C, G, C. I can just alternate as much as I want between the 1 and the 4 chord. And that's true of all the other chords in the song. So when we go to the 4 chord, you can play the 4, which is the C. You can play the 4 chord and then the 4 chord of the 4 chord. So that would be an F. So you can go. And that's that Keith Richards thing. So to me, Keith Richards picks up on that, and when I hear him play, there's that gospel element. And I always trace that 1 to the 4 chord thing back to gospel. That's what that sound is to me. That's where I hear it come from. It probably goes way, way deeper than that. But when I hear that southern black gospel blues thing, I hear, and a lot of that's played on an organ, I hear the 1 to the 4 to the 1, kind of a pivot, rocking back and forth. It's a very cool sound. So that's the second point. First point is shuffle. Second point is 1 to the 4 chord. The third point is clever turnarounds. So the turnaround, like in a song, you have verses, right? Well, when you get to the end of a verse and you go back to the beginning of the next verse, that's the turnaround. You're going from the end of one verse back to the beginning. It happens in blues, country, everything. We always kind of repeat ourselves in music. And so the turnaround is, if we were to play this, I'm going to give you 2 examples. I'm going to show you the way that you might see it in a chord chart, like in a book. It would be very sterile. So it'd be like, this would be the turnaround part. Right? So it's the 1. So, well, I'm playing the 1 here. Again, that's another G chord. G, D, G. So 1, 5, 1. Very safe, very predictable. That's the kind of kumbaya style like you might hear sitting around a campfire. It works, but it's a little dull. But a gospel way of playing that, same thing, the turnaround, might be something like this. We still end up on the G. We still come back to the 1, but look at all the extra. All the extra steps that are in there. And those extra steps to me are gospel. It's just these clever turnarounds. And there's not like one way to do it. There's lots of ways. Now I'm going to show you what I just did there, and that's part of this composition. But it all hinges on this one fact. It's the 2-5-1 turnaround. It's the standard jazz turnaround that we hear. And now typically a 2 chord would be minor. So if we were playing the key of G, our 2 chord would be an A minor. Our 5 chord would be a D, D7, dominant 7. And then we go to the 1. So you'd have 2, 5, 1. But in this style, you take the 2 chord, you make it major. So you have a major A or an A7, then a D7, and then to the 1 chord. So 2, 5, 1. And to give you another variation on that, you play the 2 major, and then instead of playing the 5, check this out. This is so cool. You play the 4 diminished, and then the 1. Big light bulb went off for some of you. Go, whoa, I never thought of that. I never heard that before. So 2 major, the 4 diminished, and then to the 1. And what's happening there from that 4 to the 4 diminished 1 is, listen to this. That's the note that's happening between those chords. So this note in the C, or in the 4, this note in the C diminished, and then this note in the 1, in the G. Pretty cool, that little walk down. But and then back to the 4, and then back to the 1. Awesome, classic gospel. All right, so those are 3 elements that I hear that are fairly consistent, which give your song that kind of gospel sound. Just as a review, the first one is the cadence. Remember to put it to a shuffle, play ahead of the beat a little bit. The second one is to go from the 1 chord to the 4 chord. And you can do that. You can play the 4 chord of any chord you're on. You can just rock back and forth. So cool. And then the last one is the turnaround, or clever turnarounds like this. And they all kind of hinge on the 2 major, 5, 1. But you've got as an alternative 2, 4, 4 diminished, 1. Love that. All right, so let's break this song down now. We're playing this song in the key of G, and it starts off like this. So that's the first thing we're gonna do. Now look at what I'm doing there with my left hand. It's pretty minimal. You can see what I'm holding down is the G chord, like this. That's where I've got a bar here on the 3rd fret, strings 1 and 2, 4th fret 3rd string, and then the 5th fret 4th string. It's the top part of your bar chord there, where you're barring on the 3rd fret. I don't need the full thing. I just need the top 4 strings so that my pinky's free. That's why I do that. When my pinky's free, I can play extra notes. So remember that. Another takeaway, some of you may not have thought of that. Why play all your strings like that? You don't need to. There's no reason to do that. Sometimes there is, but most of the time there's not. And I try to get as minimal as I can with chords. That's why I love triads, because they're just 3 notes and you have extra fingers to work with. Okay, to play this the way that I tabbed it out, I started with the 5th fret 4th string and then did a hammer on. Now that sounds very piano-ish. So we play that and then we lift my middle finger and hammer it on. So I'm just hammering on the 3rd interval of the chord. Now when I'm playing that, I'm playing strings 2 and 3. So all together you have, and then pinky down on the 5th fret 2nd string, and then we come up to the 1st string, which is behind the bar there. So you can see I'm holding down the chord the whole time, except for that hammer on there. Now watch this. There's the pivot to the 4 chord. So cool. So what I'm doing there is playing, I'm doing a bar with my ring finger, 5th fret, strings 4, 3, and 2. It's a C, right? That's your 4 chord. See, are you getting that? We're going from the 1 chord to the 4 chord, back to the 1 chord. And we go back to the 1 chord. But when I went to the 1 chord, I do the little build a chord thing, or that's what I call it. It's like you're building the chord from minor to major by hammering on and then hitting that 1 string. Actually, to count this in, this comes in, that first note comes in on the and of 4. So you go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now we're gonna go. What am I doing there? Triads. We're gonna play a G chord up here using the D shape. It's just the same D shape you learn in first position, but we're playing it up here so that your middle finger's on the 7th fret. And then we're gonna play strings 1, 2, and 3 on the 5th fret, down to your G triad here. Why these 3 notes? Well, think of like, remember I said we pivot between the 1 chord and the 4 chord? I think of this as like a part of a C9, so it would be like a C chord. And then we go back to the 1 chord. And then I want another little embellishment with my pinky on the 2nd string, 5th fret. And then we go to the 4 chord. Now what I'm doing here is I'm sliding in to strings 4, 3, and 2 on the 5th fret. Why am I doing that? That's your C chord. That's the 4 chord. And I don't need to make the full chord like that or like this. I'm just playing this little triad here. This makes it so much easier. Look at that. I've got 3 free fingers to do whatever I want. And that's what I did. I went just to keep the melody of that little light, this little light of mine. 2nd string, we're gonna do 5th fret and then come up here to the 8th fret. And then the 5th fret 1st string back to the 8th fret. So you have, and then I go back to that 5th fret 2nd string. So that's all I'm doing for the second part of that, or the 4 chord. And then watch this. That's pretty cool. What I'm doing there is I'm playing the 4 sharp diminished, which leads us back to 1. Let me show you how to play the chord first. So we're going to take our pinky and our ring finger on the 5th fret, strings 2 and 4. Index finger on the 3rd fret, 3rd string. And then our middle finger goes down on the 4th fret, 5th string. That is a C sharp diminished 7 chord, or C sharp diminished chord. And you should know this from blues. I've covered this in many lessons. When you're going from the 4 chord back to the 1 chord, you can play the 4 chord and then the 4 chord sharp diminished 7, which leads you back to the 1. And that's what I did. I went, and then to that 4 sharp diminished 7, or C sharp diminished 7. I think I played it like this. And then back to the G chord, or the 1 chord. So once we come back to the G chord, I did the little 4 chord, and then back to the 1 chord again, that same move. So I went from the diminished chord, and then the whole thing repeats from there. But before we do that, let me play it slowly so that you can hear everything we played up to this point. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now we're ready for that turnaround. That's where I go. So I came up to the G up here, like we've done before, using the D shape. And then a B7 chord. And I'll explain this in just a second, but here's just a B7. You got to play a B major bar chord on this, barring on the 7th fret, but take your pinky out of it, so that you can put your pinky down on the 10th fret, 2nd string. And then keep the same bar there, but now we're going to play an E minor. So these 3 fingers are making the A minor shape, but we're barring here on the 9th fret. So you have... All right, so I went to the E minor chord, which would be like the 6th chord. And you hear that in a lot of gospel songs. I don't care if you're playing Amazing Grace or I'll Fly Away, any of the standards. But sometimes they'll just keep it major and they won't do that. And sometimes they'll work in the minor, the relative minor, or the minor 6th chord. There is no right answer, really. So on a song like This Little Light of Mine, let me just sing it. That's the only way I can think to demonstrate this. I'm not a great singer, but I want to point this out. So this would be playing it straight, just going from the 1 chord to the 5 chord and back to the 1. No minor. It'd go like this. This is probably the way it would be tabbed out or chorded out in most songbooks. It'd be like this. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Right? Now that's one way to do it, is just playing it straight. And that's right. But another way that you might see this would be to play the relative minor chord, work that in, or that minor 6th chord. So that would sound like this. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. So you can see that you can work in that minor chord as well. And that's what I did when I played that E minor. But before I played the E minor, I played the 5 chord of the E minor. That's called a secondary dominant chord. Some of you are going, what? You're like freaking me out with all these terms. If you want, I'll put a lesson up on the screen if you want to know more about a secondary dominant chord. The whole gist of that is that any chord that you're playing, you can always play, before you play the chord, in any arrangement, you can play the 5 chord of that chord. So in this case, the B7 is the 5 chord of E minor. I'm just going to leave it there. I'll leave the lesson number up on the screen if you want to investigate that. Otherwise, you can skip it. But that's what's going on. I'm playing. So you have this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Now, most of this we've walked through. major 2, the 4 chord, the 4 diminished, back to the 1. The only thing that I added in addition to that was from after the E minor, I played the 4 sharp diminished, which would be the C sharp diminished, like we did down here. Remember, we played it here? I'm just playing it in a different voicing. So I played it here, and then I went back to the 1 chord, and then did that turnaround. So that's where it's coming from. So, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Doesn't that sound much better than just this little light of mine? I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. That sounds so safe, I guess, versus all the movement that you hear. And that's that gospel element. There's lots of different ways you can do it, but remember, it all hinges on the 2 major, 5, 1, or the 2, 4, 4 diminished, 1. Different ways, but they're accomplishing the same goal, which is to get us back to the 1. Every single one of these examples gets us back to the 1. And it, just different clever ways of doing it. And to me, that gospel style has some of the best ways of doing it. Let me go ahead and back up and play through everything that we covered in this video one more time so that you have a final reference for this. And then we'll see you in part 2 where I go into more of a lead part, which is very cool and a lot of fun. It's still following the same principles. We're still got a bit of a shuffle and we're following the same chord structure, but I wanted to work that in as well. If you're not a premium member yet, look into it. I have 10 years worth of lessons that are in depth like this, lots of different roots related styles, so blues, jazz, country, rock, that kind of stuff. So if you like this lesson, you'll like all the other stuff. And you have all the tabs and the MP3 jam tracks and everything you need to learn how to do it. All right, let's take a look at this one more time and then we'll see you in part 2. 1, 2, 3, 4.